So what he does is he breaks it down to programming. That's the biggest metaphor of it. It's like programming, and all that we can do is just based on the programming of the environment, and which is mostly our family. Like what had the most influence on us. So it's really about the programming. So his biggest thing is that the only way to reprogram your computer, if you keep getting the same results from your operating system, it's not the computer itself, it's not the keyboard, it's not the mouse, it's the operating system. So that's where he talks through. And he says the first thing to do is also to realize how people are talking to themselves about themselves and how you're talking to yourself about yourself. The first is going to be the negative, which is I'm not good remembering names.
Right.
I'm always late. Not a shot. I love you, right?
Because I can't remember names for shit. So the shot
Just tell them 20 minutes earlier. Like it's all good. I'm looking at you. I'm like, you don't remember names.
No, I don't at all.
Right. And then the question is that what are you saying to yourself? So the whole thought is the power of less about motivation, outside forces that are motivating us to get the job done, and more about self-talk. So he comes from the perspective that all things can be adjusted, everything about who we are, where we're going, how we view the world, and it can all be adjusted with self-talk. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily as simple as saying affirmations. It goes a step further. It's reprogramming our self-talk. So are the words that we say in the negative without us even realizing it about ourselves because that's how we were programmed and that was the environment that we were around. So I was actually with a guy recently that I didn't know him, but he's from New York. And
you don't know everyone in New York?
No, I wish I did. I know most people.
I was gonna say you know most people.
But they know me.
Oh, that's what it is.
So
excuse me.
Yeah, apology accepted. Yeah. I don't forget things.
Yeah.
So as the way he was then communicating with me, it started to make me understand how he probably communicates with himself, because it made me realize the way I grew up communicating, and it was everything he said was so rooted in ridicule, and what a lot of us take as playful is actually disguised as ridicule. But it's this idea of, well, that's just the way we talk to each other. That's our culture, right? But in fact, what that does is that's showing at a young age to program that type of thinking in your mind where things are rooted in ridicule. So then we actually start to ridicule ourselves. And what do? You ridicule someone that you don't have respect for. Right? And then that lies the problem. So the minute that person starts to ridicule me, I don't even know him. Right? I've known him for a week, but because we come from the same place, because we maybe have communicated in the same way, you're going to communicate with me in a form of ridicule. I don't even know you, my man. I don't know you. But the second I allow that to happen, I've now told myself, my subconscious, that I'm not a person deserving of respect because I'm going to allow someone that I met a week ago to talk to me and ridicule me over something that I'm doing. Where it's, we're talking about some of the content that we all invest in and we take time to create. Right. And then someone that's with him says, well, wow, all right, well, can't wait to see that shit. Right. With a little bit of ridicule, a little bit of snark.
A little bite under that tone.
You know what I mean?
Like, oh, how's your little business going?
Right.
That kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just, but we need to stop that immediately and realize where are we perpetuating that in our lives.
Right.
So I shot back right away. I mean, you guys know me. I'm like, oh, were we going to fight? Okay, no problem. I'm going to slip the jab real quick.
Right.
And then I'm going to bring this shoulder back down and I'm going to come back with the hook. Very simple.
Yeah.
You took a jab at me. I slipped your jab. I came back with the hook. And I'm in the wrong, which was, no, it's not stupid at all. It's designed to bring value to people. Could you say the same for the work that you do? Crickets. Crickets. But again, it goes back to, if we go back to this book, which is all about self-talk.
Right.
So what self-talk have we programmed into our minds based on the people that are around us? And with the levels, one is negative, two, then the second one is going to be where it's not negative, but it still has an undertone of I can't do that. right? So it's not I'm bad, but it's a negative undertone of I can't do that.
Right.
And then the third is then when you get into affirmations, and then the fourth is when you only speak positive things about yourself consistently, and creating that pattern of how it can do. This book gives you a roadmap. And to what I found the most helpful is the recorded ones.
You
By
know,
far.
That's very powerful. You know, just leads me to a thought. I do this with my clients a lot lately. I notice that self-talk immediately, and you know, in order to
That's right. I didn't even think about that.
in order to change your body, you really have to change your mindset first.
Right.
And it's critical because a lot of times I see that people, that's almost, it puts on a pedestal how you really truly talk to yourself when you're being challenged, when you're being put into a position of stress, strain, and effort, and not really being able to easily do something. That's when it shows up how you encourage yourself, how you motivate yourself. And I have to constantly say two different things. I say, on the way, and I say, we'll get there soon. Right? We'll get there soon. On the way. That on the way mentality we talked about a little bit.
Right.
On the way. So right now, man, instead of I'm weak, I'm so weak. No, we're on the way. We're on the way.
Yeah.
We're on the way. You're gonna get there. We're on the way. Project that positivity because it does truly matter. You know, because as soon as I'm weak, it just puts you in this negative, and then you still start picking yourself apart. Versus just say, hey, I just got into the gym today, and I might not have done this in years, months, days. Right? Encourage yourself. The fact that you're here alone is already a victory.
It's even the one word that you can add to a bunch of things that you're already saying is just the word yet.
Right.
Like, I can't lift this weight yet.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I can't do that yet.
Yeah.
Right? And that could be a trick where if you identify, okay, well, wait a second, I'm speaking this way. Now, how do I at least start speaking the other way?
Yep.
Right? You're not going to change it overnight.
Yeah.
That's just impossible.
It's tough.
But you got to be able to craft it to head in that right direction. And then also you got to listen to the way people talk to you. And you'd be surprised. Like some people, you know, they communicate with you in ways that it lacks, you know, a certain amount of respect, which we're talking about from the book. And you mentioned before too, is like men need respect more than they need love.
Right.
And what ends up happening is that even men, where they are at certain points in their life, respect in general, men just have a big tank that they need filled up with from respect.
Right.
But then what I would also suggest to women is that it can be a superpower if you know that, right? Like if you know that about what men, I don't even want to say crave, need the most is respect.
So
by far.
Let me ask you a question as a woman to two men. We're all like, it seems like, you know, we're against each other right now, right? And we always have to have our point or our, you know, you need to understand how I'm feeling, I need to understand you feeling, da, da, da. It seems like, at least in my relationship, when I try to address and, you know, my man and tell him like, hey, this is bothering me, this is how I'm feeling, he immediately takes it in a negative way. And so I'm trying to understand better how I can communicate to him without him thinking it's attacking.
Right.
Is it more when we're not having, or you know, just in regular conversation, like I'm speaking more to the king in him per se, and I'm like, go ahead.
So, well, there's the new book, the one I just sent you guys, Love and Respect.
Okay.
Which is women's desire for love and men's need for respect.
Okay.
So I can't, right? So being from the outside looking in, I can't say how you're communicating.
No, but
that's the biggest
and I'm just asking in general.
Sure.
Is it that when everything is good and everything is lovely, I need to make extra steps to show him love, show him respect, show him appreciation, speak to him in a different way than just like, hey, how was your day?
So there's a great concept that is in this book, which so there's two concepts: unconditional love. As a woman, how do you feel about unconditional love? Is that something you're very comfortable with, like unconditional love?
Yeah, it's tricky.
Just in general, let's
say. In
the
general,
concept in general.
I believe in it,
and
I believe it, especially when it comes to family and children.
Right.
That's
right.
It's just a matter of doing it with the right people.
Right. It's a lot different for men. So what the book suggests also is that the way to come from the female perspective, talking to your man, not to all men.
Right.
That's the biggest thing.
Right.
To your man is unconditional respect. That's where things start to change.
That's
Right?
interesting.
It's interesting.
It is
And
interesting.
there's almost a visceral reaction that we sometimes feel when we hear this idea of unconditional respect, because we've been taught that respect is earned. Respect is earned. You need to earn my respect. And then what ends up happening is that men and women that are the yin and the yang, one needs love, one needs respect. The minute you speak to him in a way, he's not here. What you're communicating to him is you not feeling loved.
Right.
That's it.
That's it.
But when you're communicating it in a way that it lacks the respect that he needs. Whether you realize you are or not, I promise you, I know you, I love you. You are.
I know, I can be a little,
I understand.
a little snappy.
I understand, because if you communicate because of what you've been around,
Right.
you've been
Programming.
correct, your
Right.
programming, the way you've been spoken to,
Mhm.
right? Like, we're listening on the phone right now, like the way you've been spoken to
Right.
has been with a little bit of a lack of respect.
Right.
Right. And I can hear that and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's why you communicate that way.
Right.
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 But it's about deprogramming yourself and saying, how do I give my man, not all men, my man, unconditional respect? Where how can I communicate this in a way that's loaded with respect? And as a mother, you can probably also contest to the fact that did Jaden have like a superhero phase?
Jaylon.
Right, excuse me, Jaylon.
Yeah. Oh, for
Superhero
sure.
phase, right?
Iron Man on through.
There we go.
Yeah.
Now, what's the metaphor there, right? If when he's there, when he had that on, he was not a little boy anymore. How did you get him to raise up to the next thing he needed to do?
Right.
You say, well, listen, little boys don't wear diapers.
Right.
You're a big boy now.
Right.
And you have to start treating him different.
Right.
As you're going to have to start treating him different as he gets to be
Oh yeah.
in his 20s,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the same thought process, if you're already treating your man with such a level of respect, I guarantee he'll raise himself to that level of love that you need. But what ends up happening is that it becomes this tug of war of I'm not getting the love I need, well, I'm not getting the respect I
And
need.
then it's ego.
And then you feel, and then it's ego.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what you're doing there is you're playing a game of I don't feel loved, I'm going to communicate with you in a way that lacks respect. Not disrespect
Right.
necessarily,
Right.
lacks respect. When that happens, he then starts giving you even less love,
Mhm.
right, than you had.
Right.
Now it becomes this cycle. So now it's sort of saying to yourself, where can you correct it? By giving unconditional respect. That will then help both sides of things.
I see
And
that.
if he's on board too, and it's like, listen, she's not saying it, she's not meaning it the way you're hearing it,
Yeah.
but we can't help the way we hear it. So we can't adjust the way we hear it, nor can we judge ourselves for hearing it that way, nor should you judge him for hearing it that way. It has to be up to me the way I communicate, understanding your ears, right? Like I've known you, I know your ears.
Yeah.
There's certain ways I don't communicate with you because if I did, it would be you would feel so unloved, right? But for me, I'm like, oh, okay, is this the way we're going to talk? You want to talk locker room? Okay, you want to talk that way?
Right.
I'll go hard,
Right.
but I know that if I do that, it'll make you feel unloved by your guys, and
Right.
I don't want that.
Right.
So I hold back from it rather than like, oh, we're going to play the. You know what? I won't.
Right. But see, and I think that
Does that make sense, by the way?
It does 100%. And I think that's where it's like in any relationship, friendship, whatever.
Mhm.
Even if I think we do have to have our own boundaries, but then I think we do also sometimes, if a person is important enough to us, we have to sometimes adjust
Sure.
how we normally communicate.
1,000%.
And I think one of the things I'm taking away, even from, I mean, because you both know me a long time, like relationships are not something that I'm like, oh yeah, let's go do this. Like
Yeah.
I'm not a relationship. Not that I love love, but I'm not just going to date and be in any kind of relationship. So this is new for me in a
Right.
sense. But in this, I'm realizing that because of programming, I have my own shit that I have to work through, and there's no way I can work through it and become a better person. Not like if I am by myself, if I am isolated. So I'm trying to remember that when there's times that if we are butting heads, some of it is my own shit that I need to work through.
Well, and what I would say is that in the vast majority of things where there's two butting heads, you're both ramming. So there's absolutely something that we
Yeah.
have to own that is based on the way it's based on us.
Mhm.
And so much of what we see in others that pushes our buttons,
Yeah.
is because we're probably doing the same to other people, right? And again, just like you said, when you love someone and you have unconditional love, or you have relationships that are extremely important in your life, it also could be work relationships, right? If you have a very important relationship with a client, with a manager, with someone that you work for or with, you have to communicate with that person. You have to figure it out, right? And you have to say, this is an important relationship. How do I need to adjust my communication accordingly, rather than, well, this is just the way I talk, right? And that's the way you got to accept it.
Well,
So, you know, and then what you can then, as you're, depending on the way you were raised, who you were raised around, the way you were communicated to, then creates the patterns of how you communicate.
Right.
Right. So then again, you playing sports, you're hanging with guys and whatnot. Now all of a sudden it's like, oh, you want to communicate that way?
Yeah, it can be very,
No problem.
very grotesque.
And at the same time, it's like, if that's what you want,
Cool.
then that's what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
And then it may be then counterproductive to this other thing you want.
Right.
Especially if it's your intimate relationship with a man.
Right.
Because the minute you go down that path, and I've been guilty of this 1,000 times, the minute you go down that path of communicating with or allowing a way to be disrespected or treated with a lack of respect, because that's our currency, and then understanding that how are we treating this person in a way they're viewing that they view as unloving, right? So it's a very slippery slope.
Yeah.
Very slippery slope.
I think communication in general needs to be strengthened. I think the way that we understand how to verbally communicate through words, how we're feeling, will help offset a lot of these misunderstandings. And a lot of times, I think in relationships, you have these conflicts that come from misunderstandings.
Right.
Truly.
Right.
Because we are imperfect beings. You know what I mean? We all hear that, don't talk about the plank in somebody else's eye until you address the plank in your own eye. And it's just going down the thought process of like, well, I know that I'm not perfect. And so when we're encountered with somebody else's imperfections, it makes us a little less judgmental. We're less to say, hey, you're wrong, fix it. It's like, okay, I understand how this works. There's gaps. And now these gaps in this individual is affecting me. So now how can I shelter this person from a compassionate place if I get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doing your best.
Well, and I think that's a really, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm saying like how you're thinking about it is it's high level, and it's really, it's an adult way to look at it. And I think right now, so many people, they're not taking the ownership part of it, or just that how can I, like I see what you're going through and what you're dealing with, how can I adjust myself to meet you where you are? A lot of people aren't willing to do that. It's your fault, it's not my fault.
Right.
You know what I mean? I didn't mean to cut you off.
It is, and I think it's because it's an outsourcing of the accountability of how we're feeling.
Right.
And when we're talking about something, a lot of what you just said about the philosophies of that book is like sometimes how we're feeling, those feelings are drummed up not only externally from other people, but also from that self-talk that we're giving to ourselves. And somebody can say something to you that drums up a way of thinking, that programming that you had from coming up, and now all of a sudden in your feelings. But every time we only outsource the accountability to the other individual, that's when sometimes people are going to feel attacked because they're not going to feel understood, and they're not going to feel like you gave them an opportunity to be imperfect and to be human. And so it depends on how we choose to communicate our emotions. If you come from a kind, compassionate place, like, hey, this is how I'm feeling, like I understand, this is how you're operating, but we can do this dance a lot smoother, stop stepping on each other's toes, if you move me like this. Is there any way that I can move to help you get into a better position? And it just made me think about how much we just don't know. And I think we go into relationships being more experts on ourselves, but not on a relationship dynamic.
Right.
And so we come in a little bit selfish, unintentionally, and it's all about my needs, my needs, my needs, my needs, my needs. And as soon as you're prompted in a moment with a feeling because your needs aren't met, hey, you got to fix it. I'm feeling away. You did something to me. My needs not being met. It's coming from a self place, which it should, but in a healthy way. It's a paradigm that makes me think about a university, right? When you select a university, you haven't been there long term. You like it. You like the way it looks. You walk around campus. You like the way it feels. You like the people, right? You like the energy. So when you meet somebody, you like their energy. You don't know them.
Right.
You didn't meet their family. You don't know what they've been through, but you select them because you enjoy it. Now you got to go through a process of learning the curriculum, right? So that you can actually be successful in the dynamic of school. So if you want to be successful in a dynamic relationship, I think if we adopt a mentality of I have to learn this person, so before I cast these expectations of how I assume they know how to treat me, I have to show them how to treat me. And I have to teach them how to treat me. And when you're coming from a standpoint of a teacher, we don't ridicule the student for not knowing yet. We look at the student like, you just don't know this yet. I studied this. I studied me for the past however long years.
Right.
You just meeting me. So now let me take you through chapter 1, freshman year, sophomore year, but people trying to get married after 6 months and wonder why they have complications in year 6. And it's like, it might have took 3-4 years for y'all just to get on the same page. And I think it's powerful to say, hey, let's select what we like, who we like, and then through the process of growing together, I think now we're going to mold that individual into being someone who learns us, knows us, so that now we can dance and have a good time. But I think it's too much adversarial type of thing.
Yeah. Well, a couple quick things that I got a few from what you were saying. Number one is expectations. Do we even have expectations in other people? And is that even good or bad? Right? Because it's sort of, if we have expectations of a relationship, we have expectations of what, as soon as you have expectations, then that means what you feel like you deserve or what you're supposed to be getting back.
Right.
Right? Then that instantly is coming from a place of lack. And we've all been guilty of this.
Right.
I'm not pointing my finger at anybody. They would always say one finger out for, 3 fingers back or whatever they say, right? Like, we're all guilty of this. So the question is that when, do we have expectations in others? And what is it that we're out there looking for from this expectation perspective? And are we setting the bar based on what we think they can do versus maybe not even knowing who they are, right? We have expectations that someone could bench press something because they look like they can, but then maybe they can't because they've never been in the gym before and don't know what they're doing, right? So number one is whether or not we can set the expectations. Number two, you came up with a great metaphor, which is the idea of the dance, right? And in these interactions, if we say to ourselves, look, all right, this is a dance that we can both benefit from. You're stepping on my toes, I'm stepping on your toes. Okay. Rather than me stopping to dance and trying to teach you your steps before I get back in, I'm going to lead. No problem. So how do we lead the interactions that we have in our lives as much as possible with the context around it? Say, I'm going to lead this interaction as much as I possibly can. There's nothing wrong with leading an interaction. You might go into a store and interact with someone that's working behind the scenes, or an interaction with a parent, right? An interaction with a brother or sister, an interaction with a client, right? An interaction with a colleague. So the idea there is how do we adjust the interactions and so that the dance is better, but leading the interactions. Right. And what can end up happening is that the pain of someone stepping on our toes is so new and fresh that it makes us say, well, this person doesn't know how to dance. I understand that. But are you doing a completely different dance than they are?
Right.
Right? It's like you're doing...
Samba and ballroom.
Correct.
Right.
Exactly. I'm doing the Paso Doble. Right. Like, why are you getting mad at me? Right? I'm doing what I need to do.
Right.
Oh, we're listening to completely different kinds of music because the context and in the dance that we're doing, we're thinking it's very different.
Right.
So then the question is, how do we lead in the dance that we have rather than just stop dancing, which can be for relationships.
Yes.
Well, I'm not going to dance anymore because this person keeps stepping on my toes. I understand that. But now let's take a step back and let's say, well, what do we both want out of this? Are we listening to the same music?
Yeah.
Right? And to the context that you were sharing before is that, sometimes when you lead with treating a person how you see them, even before they're there, magic happens. Magic happens.
Right.
Right? It's wild.
So,
if you treat a person here,
yeah,
experience has shown me that they've more often than not
risen to that level,
rather than critiquing where they are.
Right.
And it's like, I'm going to treat this man with unconditional respect, which he probably has never experienced in his life, by the way.
Yeah.
Most likely has never experienced unconditional respect, because I would say 99% of men have never experienced it before. Will raise the level of then you being able to really feel and get what you need, as long as you can communicate it back and forth. It's wild.
So let me ask you guys a question then, because you both very much are, we're talking about leading, and that's like a trigger, hot button, hot topic word, especially that men are supposed to lead.
Does it trigger you?
No. So I personally, and this is my question to you guys. Like I personally do like if I'm in a relationship, like I want more of a traditional role. Like I want to feel safe. I want to feel protected. Like I've had to battle my whole life. I don't want to be in a relationship battling. Like, and I want my man to be a man and to be the man in our relationship. So that's not an issue for me. Yeah. My question is if women we do need to lead at times, especially when we're talking about like what we're talking now and understanding how to love each other, how to communicate with each other and how to respect each other. How does the woman take that lead role when you guys are designed to always lead?
Well, I think just do the time.
Are we getting cut?
I think that would be great to attack next time.
Because what we got?
Yeah.